Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Fantasy Fire and Ice podcast. Today is Friday, September 22nd. I am your host, Chris Crawford. I am with my good buddy, Drew Silva. Drew, how's it going today?
Pretty good. A lot of people in my NFL eliminator had the 49ers last night, so I was hoping that would be more of a game. It kind of threatened to become a bit of a game like in the third quarter, but then the Giants were the Giants and the Niners were the Niners. Um,
Yeah.
so I thought I
Yeah.
was being clever by avoiding the Thursday night play. I don't like to play a Thursday night game in Survivor,
Sure.
but that was probably an easy one to advance.
I would 100% agree with that. I was happy with on the podcast with my buddy Stu Monotone and with Corey Parson. I did suggest that Ronnie Bell was a nice little flyer. Him scoring a touchdown made me feel relatively smart. I'm sure today will be an example of the opposite. Just kidding. We're going to be going over some MLB stuff. We're going to talk about top stacks, some starting pitchers to use, and some other cheap options with the Contrarian optimizer. Real quick, it doesn't look like anything is going to affect us with the weather today. That's nice to see. Hopefully not a ton of double headers over these final 10 days. They're going to be a doozy of a 10 days, Drew. There are so many playoff races that are still on the line. But of course, especially late in this year, a lot of injury stuff that we have to be aware of.
Yeah, let me run through these pretty quickly. There was good news Thursday on Vladimir Guerrero Jr., who was sent for an MRI on his right knee after being scratched from the Blue Jays lineup Wednesday. There's no structural damage. It's just inflammation, and he should be something close to a full go leading into Toronto's 3-game weekend series at Tampa Bay. Maybe gets back into the starting lineup for Friday's series opener. Either way, won't require a lengthy absence. Christian Yelich, still no clarity with him and when his return to the Brewers lineup might come. He's played in just one game since September 8th because of a lingering back injury. Luis Ariz, he missed Wednesday's series finale against the Mets, probably questionable for Friday's series opener against the Brewers because of a sprained left ankle. He suffered that injury while taking pregame infield practice on Tuesday. He's the current MLB batting average leader at 354. That's by a pretty wide margin over Ronald Acuña. Worth checking the Marlins lineup to see if he's in there. Ha-Sung Kim has been bothered by abdominal discomfort for a while now. Look for maybe an update on that situation ahead of the Padres series opener Friday against the Cardinals. Kim's been great this year, especially in terms of fantasy scoring and especially against left-handed pitchers if the Padres
Right.
line up to face some lefties in that Cardinals rotation. Overall for Kim, 17 homers, 36 stolen bases on the season so far. Royce Lewis, we're still waiting on an update from him. He was sent for an MRI on his hamstring when the Twins returned home from their road trip. Should get some news on that before Friday's series opener against the Angels. Royce Lewis is like setting records with all the grand slams he's been able to
Yeah.
hit in a short period. Can hopefully give it a go against an Angels team that is in complete shambles. Some other minor ailments out there, but that about covers the most relevant players that you're going to want to be throwing into the lineup if they're in their respective lineups on this slate.
Yeah, absolutely. Just make sure you're paying super close attention. No set it and forget it during these times. You just got to be making absolute sure that guys are in the lineup. Someone who might be in the lineup tonight, not a guarantee, but it does look like he will be joining the Tampa Bay Rays is Junior Caminero. And this is a little bit of a surprise, but it is a fun one. This is a 20-year-old. By the way, this is now 3 players this year, Drew, who were born in 2003 that have made major league debuts this year, with Yuri Perez and Jason Dominguez joining them. This will be the third Junior Caminero, one of the most improved prospects in baseball. Certainly was on radars, but absolutely crushed pitching this year in the minors. 324, 384, 591 slash line, 31 homers. Added 5 stolen bases as well. If you're just interested in this type of stuff, he drove in 94 runs, showed plenty of power production, making the jump from AA to the majors in these final few 10 games or so. Drew, how excited are you about Junior Caminero, especially from a DFS standard?
Very excited if he's going to be in there. Just an amazing talent that has achieved a really quick rise. Like,
Yeah.
he wasn't on many top 100 preseason lists because he just hadn't really played many minor league games coming out of the Dominican Republic. He's still so young, but absolutely exploded this year between the Rays high A affiliate in Bowling Green and double A Montgomery. 31 homers, a 976 OPS, 324 batting average. There's a little bit of a strikeout in his profile, but
Yeah.
that's fine for how young he is and the kind of exit velocities that he gets off his bat at such a young age. He could play third base. I think he's going to play mostly third base with the Rays. They need probably the most help at shortstop, so I think he's going to
Yeah.
play a little bit of shortstop as well.
Mhm.
But I don't think they're calling him up just to give him a little cup of coffee. I think it's going to
Mhm.
be a whole gallon of coffee because they need a little bit of offensive thump. They need, I don't know. The Rays are incredible to me. We talk about it all the time. The starting pitchers that they have on the IL right now would be a frontline rotation for any team. Obviously, they lost their franchise player. That's a whole story. It's amazing. You look at that depth chart and you're like, this is a team that can contend for a World Series. And to me, like, yeah, they would be a big time underdog, and they are, like, in terms of teams that have clinched or are going to clinch a postseason spot. They're pretty low in the odds. Low meaning the odds are high that they're actually going to make a run to the World Series. But having a talent like Caminero that you can call up from Double A to help the cause is a pretty big deal. And I think he's up to play. And if he's going to be in the lineup, we'll see what his pricing looks like on DFS sites and how quickly it could potentially rise. But that's a dart throw that I'm willing to make.
Yeah, absolutely. Like one of the very best fantasy prospects in baseball. I would have him in my top five. It's interesting to point out, by the way, that he has only played third base since July 21st. The last two games he was actually in the lineup as designated hitter. I think that's a way to get him
Oh
in the
yeah,
lineup as well, because they're a revolving door with that position. There's no guy that they just set in the lineup at the designated hitter position, which is true for most teams. There's still some left. JD Martinez is doing an awfully nice job for the Dodgers in that role, but most teams are now rotating these guys in. Absolutely looking to play Junior Caminero, assuming the price is right today, just because that upside, and it just seems like these types of prospects have special debuts. Drew, there are some 0 for 4s with a couple of strikeouts, but it seems like we see these guys have absolutely special days to make their major league debuts. It would not shock me one bit if Caminero, assuming he's in the lineup, is one of those guys. Speaking of lineups, speaking of all of this stuff, make sure you guys are checking out the Contrarian Edge Optimizer. It is the very best tool. If you're watching on YouTube right now, just scan your phone into that QR code right below Drew's beautiful face, and you can get that code for $1.99, $1.99 to use it for 7 days. We can't recommend it enough. We are just learning about fantasy DFS, if we're just being honest with you, just because we haven't had a chance to play, and it's made it so easy, hasn't it, Drew?
yeah. I wouldn't say I'm just learning about.
Learning was the wrong word. Learning is the wrong word. We are
No, but
developing.
we're playing around with these
Yes,
tools and
yes,
finding different ways to attack slates, and I
yes,
like the tools that it has in there. Hey man, like it's making me think more contrarian. I know that's in the name, but
yeah,
that's what it does when I prep for these shows and I pick out which stacks I want to roll with. It certainly
absolutely.
helped that cause.
Hey, and speaking of those stacks, who are you? What is one of the two stacks we're each going to give for Friday's slate? What's one of those that you're using today?
Start me off with the Mets at the Phillies, and I'm going to go with Francisco Lindor, Brandon Nimmo, Ronnie Mauricio, and Mark Vientos. I really like the matchup here for the Mets, even though it's been a terrible season for them. It's not the most exciting team to be getting behind right now, but they're going up against right-hander Taiwan Walker, and
Mhm.
hey, Walker deserves credit for like settling in this season and covering a lot of innings for the Phillies. He's got a 15-5 record. I mean, we know what that means, win-loss record.
Yeah,
The start to his year was rough, and there was talk that maybe he was like hiding an injury. The velocity was down. But then he went on a really good midseason run and regained a bit of the form that earned him that 4-year, $72 million contract. from the Phillies. Now, though, it has turned again. Like since the beginning of August, a 5.85 ERA with only 29 strikeouts, 18
Right.
walks over his last 40 innings. He's allowed 15 runs on 19 hits and 7 walks in 17 and a third innings so far in September. Like he's like a wavering boxer in the corner of a ring, and I like the Mets to take advantage, especially some of their left-handed hitters. I pointed out on Thursday's show that the Mets struggle against left-handed pitching. I believe they had the 24th ranked combined team OPS this year against southpaws, but against righties, it's more middle of the pack, upper tier in OPS. Nimmo and Lindor are going to be more your more reliable and expensive plays at the top of the lineup. But I'd plug in Ronnie Mauricio too. He's shown some very promising flashes since earning a September 1 call-up. Mark Vientos has taken over the DH role from Daniel Vogelbach, which isn't hard to do, but Vientos has quietly been on a tear over the last handful of weeks. A 303 average, a 949 OPS, 6 home runs over his last 18 games dating back to August 29th. I really like the Mets to beat up on Taijuan Walker and, get the Phillies from clinching right away against them.
Yeah, I like that call a lot, and I think that might be a little bit contrarian just because Philly's playing so well. Mets obviously one of the most disappointing, if not the most disappointing team in the National League. I think that's a really nice call. I'm going to go with the team. I don't actually know what direction the Yankees are from the Mets. I'm a bad New Yorker because I'm not a New Yorker, but I'm going to go with the Yankees against the Diamondbacks. In part, I'm going to go contrarian, or not contrarian. I'm going to go with some regression here. Brandon Pfaadt pitched really well in his last start. 5 1/3 innings, 4 hits, 0 earned run, 1 walk, and 6 strikeouts against the Cubs. A ton of credit to him, and we have seen flashes of the guy who has a chance to be a really nice starter. But they've been flashes, Drew, and for the most part, Brandon Pfaadt has really struggled. He still has a 5.86 ERA. Even with those 5 1/3 shutout innings, his ERA in September is 4.20 because his other 2 starts were not so great. Yankees appear to be swinging the bat a little bit better, had a decent night at the plate yesterday. I'm going to go with, and I'm not going with the cheapies, I'm going to go with DJ LeMahieu, Aaron Judge, Anthony Volpe, and Gleyber Torres. I think that they'll have a big offensive night. I just don't believe in Brandon Pfaadt yet as a back-to-back guy who can give you back-to-back quality starts. So I'll play against Pfaadt and hope that the Yankees can give me some runs.
Did you say you didn't know where Queens was in relation to the Bronx?
Correct.
So, yeah, Queens would be like to the right, the east of Manhattan. The Bronx is north of Manhattan. So you just go a little bit northwest. I think that's right.
I'll take the train. I'll just take the train and hope for the best.
Just pop your headphones on, listen to this podcast, and get yourself to Yankee Stadium.
Our producer Keith tells us that's correct, so that's great. We're great at geography.
My second stack is going to be the Tigers at the Athletics. Spencer Torkelson, Jake Rogers, Javier Baez, Matt Vierling. We're going to continue to beat up on the A's on this show. Sorry to kick a team and a fan base while they're both down, but even in this matchup, it should be a contrarian play, and that's what we like to build around here when possible. Detroit earned a 7-3 win in Thursday's series opener. Shout out to me for giving you Tarek Skubal. 10 strikeouts, 2 hits, 1 walk over 7 shutout innings. But let's focus on the offense for now, though. Like Torkelson finding his way as a sophomore with a power binge here in the second half. 17 of his 29 homers have come since the All-Star break, and the OPS has greatly improved over the last several weeks. I'll call him to reach the 30-homer plateau on Friday night against A's left-hander Ken Waldichuk and his 5.40 season ERA. Waldichuk allowed 6 earned runs over just 4 innings on his last turn through the A's rotation Sunday against the Padres. I like Jake Rogers as a cheap but powerful option at catcher. Maybe gets a turn at DH. Javier Baez is finally expected to return to the lineup after missing 3 or 4 games with lower back tightness. He should be rested and ready to do something for me. We don't have to talk about how the first few years of that contract have looked and how the rest of it's going to look. It's not great, but I think he still has a little bit of talent left in him, and I think could do some damage against Ken Waldichuk in that A's bullpen. And then Matt Verling, who's been getting leadoff looks while playing third base and some outfield
Mhm.
for the Tigers. Sometimes batting second versus lefties. You could see him hitting second on Friday night. Another inexpensive top of the lineup dude there with Verling. If the Tigers win out over these final 9 games, they can finish 500 on the season. So that's something to shoot for.
Yeah, there you go. That's I mean, look, 500 might have seemed like would win the division in the AL Central not that long ago. But
You're right.
yeah, that's a pretty solid option, and I like the contrarian play of that for sure. This is not a contrarian play whatsoever. If Atlanta's facing a mediocre left-handed starter, you should stack them. And I am going to go with Atlanta against the Washington Nationals and Patrick Corbin, who, to give him credit, he's pitched well in his last 2 starts. He went 6 innings of 1-run baseball against the Brewers. He went 6 2/3 innings of 2-run baseball with 8 strikeouts against the Pirates. This ain't the Brewers and Pirates, Drew. This is one of the, if not the very best lineups in baseball. So again, if you're using this, you're going with the stars. I'm going with Austin Riley, Ronald Acuña Jr., Michael Harris, and Eddie Rosario. Wouldn't be shocked if Acuña and Harris, or maybe even both, give you a combo meal tonight against Patrick Corbin, who is absolutely due for another bad start. He has been one of the most mediocre starters in baseball at best over these last couple of years. You have to play Atlanta against Patrick Corbin. Let's go into starting pitchers to use. This is kind of interesting. We've got 3 guys on the road for this one, Drew. But let's start with the guy who's starting at home against the Angels.
Pablo Lopez at home against the visiting Angels. There have been more blowups this year for Lopez than I would like or any Twins fan would like. But overall, like the season-long stats have been either fine to very good, a 3.58 ERA, 1.15 whip, and 221 strikeouts in 183 and 2/3 innings. He surprisingly had some trouble against the White Sox last time out. That was this past Saturday, but still got to 8 strikeouts. And the start before that against the Mets, he was brilliant. 14 strikeouts over 8 scoreless innings, two hits, no walks. He hit 2 batters, but yeah, tremendous outing in the end there for Lopez against the Mets. Let's hopefully see more of that. And on paper, it seems like we should see more of that against an Angels team that, probably would have already packed it up for the season if that were allowed. No Trout, no Ohtani. Jared Walsh and David Fletcher are back and playing after being DFA'd earlier this summer. It's a complete mess. And
Yeah.
the Twins are trying to shrink their magic number to clinch the AL Central. If all goes well, they could achieve that sometime this weekend at home against an Angels team that looks ripe for a 3-game sweep. I think the Twins put the pedal to the metal this weekend against the Angels, try to get that clinch, and then use the final week to sort of set up their plans for the postseason. Maybe they could finally win a postseason series. I'm paying up for Lopez, and I'm going to throw in some value stacks. That's my way to attack this Friday slate. If you're going with that Brave stack, you probably can't fit in Lopez, but we'll give you some more value options among starting pitchers if you do want to pay up for Atlanta. And why wouldn't you want to pay up for Atlanta?
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, and you made the good point about Pablo Lopez having some clunkers, but I think he's a pretty good bet to have a nice game. Definitely can't see a blow up in this one. Cole Ragans is going to be the guy I'm using, and look, he's facing the Astros for a second.
Yeah.
Yes. He's facing the Astros for a second straight start. You're going to look at the line of 6 innings of 5-run baseball and not be too enamored with it, and I get that. He was a lot better than that line suggests. He had 7 strikeouts. He had 10 ground ball outs, and he has just pitched so dang well basically since the start of August. Had a 1.72 ERA in that month, has a 3.57 ERA even after allowing 5 runs in those 6 innings because he only gave up 2 runs against Toronto and he threw 6 shutout innings. Big thing is, man, is he's thrown strikes. And that was my big worry with Ragans is he didn't show that ability to throw strikes when he was a member of the Texas organization. But outside of a start against Toronto where he just could not find the strike zone and he still gave you 6 strikeouts, he's been able to find that strike zone and he's one of the best bat missers in baseball. It's going to be really curious to see, like, He's probably the opening day starter for Kansas City next year at this point, just how well he's pitched. And that might be darning with faint praise a little bit, but I've been really impressed with what I've seen from Ragans. He is a former top prospect. Plus, player development is not linear. I'm a believer in Ragans, not only for the rest of this year, but for the long term as well.
Yeah, I mean, there have been a lot of breakdowns from people who analyze pitchers better than me that feel like he's taken a legitimate
Yeah,
step forward. And there have been a lot of teases for Royals fans over the years with, pitching prospects that you're kind of waiting to take that step forward. I mean, you can list a ton of them: Brad Keller, Brady Singer.
sure.
I think that this might really be one where they've kind of, found like a hidden gem. And I mean, I hope they don't talk about like trading him already. That this
Yes.
is the kind of pitcher that they need to build around. They can hopefully like eke out a legitimate, young, cost-controlled pitching staff within the next few years, because
Yes.
that's going to be the way to build that organization out of this kind of perpetual rebuild that they've been in ever since, breaking it apart after winning the World Series. And what was that, 2015? I
Yep.
believe. Yeah, it's been a while now. They need to take a step forward like Cole Ragans has done.
Yes.
My other starting pitching recommendations going to be Sawyer Gipson-Long at the Athletics.
Mhm.
Gipson-Long's like hit the ground running since his September 10th promotion to the Tigers rotation. A 2.70 ERA, 16 strikeouts through his first 10 major league innings. He racked up 11 of those strikeouts last Saturday at Angel Stadium. Get him out on the West Coast again tonight for this matchup with a very non-threatening A's outfit. I don't think he's like a star in the making to any degree. Former sixth round pick of the Twins, acquired by the Tigers, and it was in that Michael Fulmer trade last
Yeah.
August. Had a 4.33 ERA in 22 minor league appearances this season between Double-A Erie and Triple-A Toledo. But what he did do well in the Tigers farm system this summer is he missed bats with good command. 126 strikeouts and 99 and two-thirds innings, 29 walks. That part of his game is all translated over into his first two big league outings, and yeah, it can hopefully translate again in what looks to be a very favorable matchup for any pitcher out in Oakland. Like, give me 7 Ks over 5 2/3 innings or 6 innings and a win. Like, we're set. I threw out some value stacks earlier, but
Yeah.
if you wanted to stack the Braves or the Dodgers or one of the better offenses on the board, maybe throw a dart with some confidence on Gipson-Long. He could be due for a blow up, but again, he has some swing and miss stuff. It could be some deception, but it's a really good matchup for him to keep this rolling a little bit, at least into his third major league start.
Yeah, I mean, look, if he was facing anybody but Oakland or Colorado, not in Oakland, I'm probably not recommending him, but he makes a lot of sense tonight because that's who he is facing. And, you only get so many more chances. Believe it or not, Drew, Oakland is not making the postseason this year. So they will not have it. You will not have a chance to use that lineup. I looked at the standings.
We get a
They're
breaking news ticker, Keith.
This is the breaking
Oakland's
news.
not.
Oakland will not make the postseason. Keith, get that on the scroll on the bottom as soon as possible. No, yeah, I like that call quite a bit. It is definitely, and it should be a cheap option too, like you said. So have a chance to add that star pitcher to the top or add those stacks that we mentioned earlier in the show. I'm going to go with Chris Sale. I think Chris Sale has looked a lot better so far in the month of September. 5 innings of shutout baseball against the Royals, 6 innings of one-run baseball against the Blue Jays in his last outing, 10 strikeouts. Did have a disappointing start against the Orioles. Lots of people have disappointing starts against the Orioles. They are a legitimate World Series contender, as crazy as that is to say. Not sure we thought it was going to be this soon, but they definitely are. And he's facing off against a White Sox team that is just not very good whatsoever. Maybe that's the other team I should have mentioned. If Sawyer Long was facing those guys, I would be looking to use them as well. Revenge game too. His former team, keep him out of the locker. Make sure he can't use any
Oh no.
scissors on any uniforms or anything
Where's
like
Drake
that.
LaRoche?
Yeah, poor Drake. Poor Drake. The poor one Drake, the other Drake's doing just fine. But yes, I like Chris Sale quite a bit. He is a guy that I'm probably not going to be drafting next year, if I'm being completely honest with you, because This is not a skill set that usually ages terribly well, but he makes a lot of sense in DFS plays when he's going to be going up against weaker lineups, and you get a couple more chances to use him in 2023. Let's take a look at.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, because I considered Sale. I mean, I like the matchup. I was thinking, like, is he going to go deep into the game? But he's building up for next year and to finally have like a normal off season.
Right.
So this is like just kind of building confidence for him going into 2024. He's going to pitch as long as he wants. I bet, like in this outing at least. Like I bet he's going to approach 100 pitches. He's almost approached, or he has. Yeah, he's gotten to 100 within his last couple outings. Some 80s in there, but I would expect him to work deep. And when he works deep into games, there's going to be a lot of whiffs. So I don't hate that play at all.
Yeah, I think that's a good call as well. How about some lineup plays today, Drew? Anybody outside of the stacks that you're looking to be using today, using the Contrarian Edge Optimizer?
I'm looking at some Diamondbacks actually for value plays, and I was considering a stack there, but it was just a little bit hard to build. But yeah, I mean, facing Luke Weaver at Yankee Stadium, that sounds like more like a tea time than a baseball game. Lourdes Gurriel is relatively cheap on DFS sites. He's been very streaky throughout the year, but he can catch fire with some extra base hits. Gabriel Moreno is a cheap option at catcher there. Geraldo Perdomo or Jordan Lawler, whoever's playing shortstop for them in this game in the Bronx, which again is located to the northwest of Queens. Jordan Lawler's been more of like a part-time player in his first major league stint. Yeah, that's okay. I think he's still a big-time talent, but he could potentially get in the lineup there. I bet he plays a little bit over the final week, as Diamondbacks have to determine, who's going to be there on their bench for the postseason. And I bet they would really like to have Jordan Lawler on their bench with the power speed skill set that he has. Like they're going to give him an audition at some point to prove that he should be. Well, assuming they make the playoffs, they're in pretty decent position right now.
Decent. Yeah. I think that's a good call. I'll say this. I would be looking to use a couple of Orioles tonight. Shane Bieber returning to the mound from the injured list. I'm not sure how well that's going to go or how deep he's going to go into the game. So that would be some options that I'd be looking at. Maybe like
Heston Kjerstad screaming at me, lefty power bat against Bieber, who might not be totally right. He's like Kjerstad. It's been hard to guess when he's going to be in the lineup. I mean, he hit a homer in his first major league start out of the DH spot. Speaking of DH, and it just popped in my mind, Luke Raley's probably going on the IL. Like he's had that lingering, that abdominal injury. So that's probably where Caminero is going to play. He's going to fill in for Raley at DH. I hadn't really, or it's a neck issue for Raley. And manager Kevin Cash said Thursday that he's going to miss several days. So that makes sense for Caminero to just plug into that DH slot.
Absolutely. And I think that's why he was in that DH spot over those last two games. That's going to do it for us at the Fantasy Fire and Ice podcast. Please make sure you're following all of our socials. We're everywhere. Please give us a shot and take a look at sportstopia.io. We have tons of great written content. It's awesome. Thanks so much for tuning in. Have a great weekend, and we will see you next time.